Broadcasting live from the number 2 happiest city in America, according to Wallet Hub. Good morning. It is great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio. That's right. We are in Corporate Woods, and Overland Park comes in number 2 on Wallet Hub's happiest cities in America in 2024. So we need some angry Overland Park residents to prove that wrong.
They're lucky I didn't answer the phone that day. I have lived here, but I don't live here currently. But I don't have anything bad to say about Overland Park as a former resident, actually.
Yeah, me neither. It's not, I think they're building too many damn apartments. I'll say that much.
Yeah, there's that then.
Fremont, California comes in at number 1 on the list. Kansas City ranked 128th out of 182. Wichita was 118th on the list. Springfield and St. Louis also down below 150. But Overland Park right in that top 5 at number 2. So I'm going to have a big old smile on my face for 4 straight hours today just to prove that Wallet Hub's rankings are correct. And we are thrilled, as always, to be here on KCMO Talk Radio. I've got to imagine that they were polling KCMO listeners, and that's how they ended up with Overland Park at number 2.
And when the 69 Expressway is done, they'll be number 1.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, as always, we've got a ton going on in this town this morning. And top of the food chain here, as far as I'm concerned, is this analysis of the new Royal Stadium proposal that was done by a guy who has been on this show before. He's been a good community watchdog in and around Kansas City, and his name is Preston Smith. So Preston Smith put together this PDF presentation that was posted on Tony's Kansas City. We got to get Tony back on the show on Friday. That's what we got to do. And he did a study of crime 1 mile from the proposed site where the Royals want to go, which is going to be, of course, right there on the crossroads, in the crossroads. And here's the data. Crime 1 mile from the proposed new Royals site is nearly 100 times worse than at the current stadiums. In 2023, this past year, there were a total of 77 separate crimes reported at both Arrowhead and Kauffman during the year. But 1 mile from the proposed stadium site downtown, there were 6,882 separate crimes reported. The Kauffman Stadium complex had 7 stolen autos during 2023. Meantime, there were 1,344 stolen autos within 1 mile from the proposed stadium. That's more than 4 cars stolen per day. There were more than 1,000 cars broken into or had parts stolen from them 1 mile from the proposed site. 7 from Kauffman Stadium. You obviously had a much larger number of armed robberies, 180 hit and runs within 1 mile from the downtown site. There were 11 hit and runs at Kauffman and Arrowhead during 2023, and there were no violent crimes. So Preston Smith has all this data. It's up on Tony'sKansasCity.com, and we can share it there. And I say this as somebody who has long understood why the Royals want to go. I'm not sitting here and saying, vote no. I'm not saying that. I never have, and I don't plan on doing that. I plan on covering the story and opining on the story on a day-to-day basis, but I'm not taking sides on this. I'll say when each campaign had a good day and a bad day, when each campaign had a good point and a bad point. And I'll tell you where the tea leaves are in this deal and where the wind's blowing, but I am not going to stake out a side. I'm going to let you decide that. But I will bring you every bit of information that we can find because something tells me that this is not leading morning news in Kansas City in this town, highlighting the dramatic difference in crime in and around the proposed ballpark compared to what you saw out at the stadiums last year.
I know your comments will get people excited, but, just keep in mind you can lose a battle but still win the war, in certain opinions. As we go through this day to day, do it in real time.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. And I just want to get on someone from the Royals at this point. I mean, I'm dying to talk to somebody there to get their pitch on this thing because right now, the loudest voices in and around the community are coming out against this thing. Whether it's people who want to see the stadium remain where it is, which is not going to happen, but obviously that crowd is loud and does exist with thousands of people in various Facebook groups making noise. Now there's an official organization that has been put together against the stadium. You have KC Tenants, an uber progressive commie group that I'm no fan of, that has also come out against the stadium. But as I noted, this is going to be very interesting, where you may have and end up with uber progressives coming together with more conservative folks in Jackson County to try to shoot down the stadium proposal. But what do we know right now? Well, today at 10 o'clock, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have a press conference, and they are going to unveil their plans for an upgraded or reimagined, since that's one of the hot phrases of the moment, reimagined Arrowhead Stadium. What does that mean? What does it look like? I don't know. Ray Stevens will cover it this morning at 10 o'clock, so listen to him coming up later this morning on KCMO. Him and Mark will have that whole thing covered for you wall to wall. But it better be good, because right now there's a lot of people who I got to imagine are looking at this proposed site in the wake of the last couple of weeks in this town. Shooting downtown, record homicides, KC current parking situation is a total fiasco. And they're saying to themselves, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to stroll on downtown right now for a baseball game with everything that's going on when I know I pull into that sports complex? I'm not getting through the booth without paying. I'm fairly well protected in an isolated area. I'm not, walking through certain streets that I may not want to walk through at certain times of the day. All those things are reasonable concerns to have. That's the other thing I'd like to make sure we add here. Because there are people that are going to say, if you are concerned about that, you're a racist. That's what they're going to say. I mean, there is going to be a major movement, I believe, in the weeks ahead that suggests if you even utter something like, I don't know how I would feel walking to a parking garage half a mile away, maybe more, as a female, let's say, with little kids, I'm not sure how I would feel about that certain times of the day in Kansas City. What are you, a racist? No. And they put you immediately on the defensive. Trust me, there are people in this town that will be pushing that narrative to get this stadium done. And the stadium, I could see it being a great thing for Kansas City. You're going to have that, now park that's put in, of course, on the top side of the south side of the loop. It's going to connect T-Mobile to Crossroads. It'll be a natural kind of connection between those two areas. I get all that. Yeah, I get it. Like, I think there are positives there. But it doesn't mean it's a slam dunk, and it doesn't mean it should be a slam dunk, because it shouldn't. And now we've got these crime stats that Preston Smith has put together here, an area watchdog, and you hear that right out of the gates. Crime 1 mile from the proposed site is nearly 100 times worse than at the current stadiums. I don't think that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside, and it shouldn't. 913-408-7957, 614 as we get the show rolling here on KCMO. Just heard from Preston Smith, a data analyst, ran for Jackson County Executive last time around, on some of the data he's got out there about the amount of violent crime within a 1 mile radius of the Royals' proposed ballpark. Dan's in Overland Park. He's on KCMO. What's up, Dan?
Morning, Pete. Thanks for having me on. I've been a database programmer and database analyst for over 20 years, and the data that Preston Smith is using is crap. It's meaningless, as at least as presented today on your show. Comparing a dense urban area total crime figures with the sparsely populated areas total crime figures. It might have some value if you compensate for the population difference, but everybody knows that an urban center is going to have more crime than a suburban sparsely populated area. So,
well, it's not even a suburban sparsely populated area. He was talking about effectively the parking lot at Arrowhead and Kauffman Stadium.
Exactly. So his data's crap, and everybody knows it.
But is it? And listen, let me ask you, Dan, because I pushed back on this where I said, hey, if you extend it out to a mile, it's going to look worse than if it's a half mile, because, we all know you get a mile outside of parts of the crossroads, and it's certainly the crime picks up a lot. But if we're talking about a quarter mile or a half mile, it's much safer. And I asked him that, and he said, listen, the crime's everywhere. So would you give him that much in saying his data is not crap? It's just maybe not. The difference is exploited in large part by the fact that we're comparing a stadium parking lot to an urban center.
That's exactly what it is. Just as you described it, he's a data analyst, so he can pull the data out of the database to fit his argument, and that's what he's done. So it's disingenuous. That component of his overall argument is pretty much worthless. It's disingenuous. He had some other valid points in regarding to whether taxpayers should pay for it, but the data that he's using to support his argument is not an effective argument at all.
All right. Dan, thank you very much. 913-408-7957. Dorian in Harrisonville next up. Hey, Dorian, good morning.
Good morning, Pete. How are you?
I'm doing well. What's happening?
Good. Well, just listen to this whole conversation. I just hear the echo of Patrick Toohey from the Schilling Institute spoke at the Pachyderm Club here several years ago. And like he said about all of these things, I've got this really dumb idea, but if we put some taxpayer money behind it, it will become a good idea. Isn't that what all of these things are? If they won't carry themselves on their own, then it's not a good idea. I mean, is anybody subsidizing you? They're not subsidizing me, so why do we subsidize that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's a very fair question that is going to be decided, Dorian, by the voters. You're absolutely right to bring that up. I mean, it's true for that. It's also true for, the dopey developers that want to put multi-story apartment complexes in Lenexa. Same thing. And the cities, are handing out these subsidies like candy. Scott's in Lee Summit. Scott, next up, what's happening, brother?
Yeah. Hey, Pete. I'm just. I know we're talking about the grassroots nature against the stadium tax, and I'm 100% against the stadium tax for conservative reasons. But I do think it's important. I'm a GOP committeeman in Prairie Township in Jackson County, specifically in the Lee Summit area. So I know Lee Summit politics, and the campaign manager that you had last week for the Committee Against New Royal Stadiums Tax. I think it's important for people to understand that committee, there was a Facebook group that had about 9,000 people that's existed since last year, and I was part of that. And they partnered with this committee run by Tim Smith. And last week, when I found out about that, I had posted on that group, not knowing the two were affiliated. I said, hey, everyone, just so you know, grassroots, we're all against the stadium, but there will be organizations who spring up in groups to fundraise off of this issue. I didn't name the committee. I didn't name the campaign manager. I just said, people, do your research. That's it. Then I got booted from that Facebook page that is run by the campaign manager, Tim Smith. He is now an admin of that group. And my assertion is that Tim is a Democrat operative for Megan. He runs Megan Marshall's campaign, and he runs all of the liberal school board candidate campaigns in Lee Summit. He is not coming at it from low taxes and
but let me stop there, Scott, before we get too far in the weeds. I guess who cares? I mean, you're going to have Democrats. If you don't want this tax to go through, you're going to have Democrats and Republicans come together, even if it's for very different reasons, to oppose it. So, who cares?
So, great question. It's not about oppose the Royal Stadium. It's about fundraising, because when the election is done and there is a balance left over in that committee, that committee can then choose where to put those funds. they can donate it to other causes or other campaigns. You don't need to raise money to oppose this issue. And that, what they did is they got 9,000 people in a group who are all like anti-tax and are now, I mean, if you go, I can't see it because I've been blocked, but if you go to that Save the Kaufman page or their own Facebook page, they are putting send money constantly all day. There will be a balance, and you have. I'm just telling people, be aware what that balance is used for after the campaign.
And that is a very fair point, and I'm glad you brought it up there, Scott. I see what you came around to there, so well done. I understand that, and that is a very legitimate point to bring up in this. And you would hope that they would spend the money on, like, radio, maybe not TV, but they can get a great bang for their buck, and I'm obviously saying this as a radio guy, bang for their buck on radio ads, and by the way, get a lot more frequency out of it than putting together a pretty TV ad, and it's a lot easier to do. I hope they spend it on that and digital and whatever else, and not just bank money and then give it to whatever pet projects they have after the fact. A minute for Steve in Kansas City. Steve, what's up?
Pete, baby, the Chiefs are throwing a Hail Mary today. They're throwing their Hail Mary to try and save the Royals. They're down, as usual. The Chiefs are down 58-42 in the preliminary polling. So it's time for Mahomes to scramble and make up a play.
So this is Mahomes doing his, pirouette in the backfield, left-handed pass, 70 yards down the field, hoping to bail out the Royals. Is that what you're saying?
We need a touchdown and a 2-point conversion in the poll and in the polling. Listen, if you talk to one of these guys, just ask them one question. The Truman Sports Complex was one of the greatest achievements of planning. Was magnificent. And that concrete is good for another 40 years. Please ask someone who supports this, why is the concrete in Royal Stadium different than the concrete in Arrowhead that they're going to be there for the next 50 years? I would love to know why they complain about the plumbing all day long,
Thank you. Got to run.
All right.
That was fun. Nice job. Text line is 913-408-7957. Pete, I thought you said downtown baseball was a done deal. Well, if I was a betting man right now, I would still bet on it passing. There's going to be $1 million behind this cause over the next few weeks, $500,000 from each team. I've got to imagine that Patrick Mahomes, Bobby Witt, these superstars are going to somehow be involved in getting this 3/8 sales tax to pass, whether it's through a commercial, a social media campaign, I don't know. But I got to imagine Clark Hunt is going to tap into his superstars, as is John Sherman, to try to help him get this sales tax extension for the new ballpark downtown and the upgraded Arrowhead. So I still believe, if I was betting here, that there's an 80% chance that it passes. But I'm not going to bet a naked lap on it. I know that much. I've made that mistake before. All right? Mark's got the evidence. It's still up on social media somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think we deleted that one.
No. Did the naked lap after I bet that Amanda Atkins would not lose to Sharice Davids by double digits. And obviously I failed that miserably. I'm just glad when Mark and I did that, well, I did the naked lap. Mark ran around and filmed me. It wasn't a morning like today. Woo! It'd be a little chilly out there.
That'd have been rough.
That would have been a rough one, doing the naked lap with this wind, 20 degrees. I saw it feels like it's 3 degrees outside. So hang tight. Hold on to that hat this morning as we get it going. Noah's in Weston. What's up, Noah? Good morning. You're on KCMO.
Oh, thank you, Pete. Just one of the speculation things that I was thinking about with the crime rates around the new Royals proposal, but the nefarious side of it, but being that they purposely allow the crime rates to go up in order to devaluate the properties around there for, either the government officials to get a little bit better kickback on return on investment or the investors themselves. So just something maybe also to look into.
So are you suggesting maybe that the crime is not as bad as what the data would indicate?
No, actually, that they're allowing the crime rates to go up in order to devaluate the property around that area.
Oh, so they can get it for cheaper when the Royals try to buy it out from people?
Yeah.
Boy, that would be dirty, but wouldn't be the first time it happened somewhere, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, it would not be the first time. That's actually one of the things that a lot of local governments have done in the past in order to try to get a quick return on investment.
Ah, gosh. I mean, I hate to even think about that, Noah, but it's a good point to bring up, man. It's a good point to bring up. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Pete.
913-408-7957. That would be crappy. But Mark was sending me a lot of stuff last night where there's now, I would call it left-on-left crime going on social media. Is that right?
Yeah. People that would usually be, high-fiving those other people are getting after each other.
So all these people who definitely, despise Donald Trump, if you talk about federal stuff, they're all on the same page when it comes to most of the national politics. But now you've got some of these folks who are like, rah-rah stadium, and some of them who are like, no gentrification. That's what's going on.
Exactly.
Oh, man, these poor souls. And they're fighting it out on social media, which I really get a kick out of as well. Mark was sending me a bunch of these tweets over the last 12 to 18 hours or so. So now we wait for today. We'll see what happens at 10 o'clock with the Chiefs and what this big, grandiose, upgraded Arrowhead Stadium is going to look like.
Probably ought to have more restrooms for women. That always seems to be an issue, no matter what year it is. So,
football games or baseball games?
Yeah, the line's a lot longer typically.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And that's even with the guys on a cold day hanging out in there, right? Listening to radio and drinking beer.
Hey, sometimes that's the warmest place at Arrowhead.
Your turnover time per unit is a little bit greater in those facilities, I think, than the men's.
That's right. Oh, man. All right, let's go to the national scene here for a few minutes. Last night, you had Michigan do its primary. And it wasn't anything we spent a lot of time on because, well, we knew the outcome. Donald Trump beat Nikki Haley 68 to 32-ish, and Joe Biden took home 80% of the Democratic vote. But there's reasons for both of these guys to potentially be a little bit nervous about what came out of last night. For Donald Trump, you can sit there and you can say, gosh, you still have 3 in 10 GOP primary voters who, even though they know the outcome, are showing up to polls to say they're not happy with him being the candidate. And then on the other side, for Joe Biden, he took home 80% of the Democratic vote. More than 100,000 Michigan voters, about 13%, voted uncommitted amid a protest campaign centered on Biden's handling of the war on Gaza. So what does that mean? Basically, people they went to the polls to just vote uncommitted, to say they're upset with Joe Biden and his handling of the war between Israel and Gaza and Hamas, really, but what's happening on the Gaza Strip. Now, why is that? Well, there's a big Muslim population in parts of Michigan, and that's who drove a lot of this yesterday in that state. Now, to put this in perspective, all right, how big is this uncommitted vote? In terms of raw ballot numbers, the number of uncommitted voters against Joe Biden on the Democratic side yesterday in Michigan was 5 times the protest vote that Barack Obama saw in the state of Michigan back in 2012, when 10% of Democrats opted against choosing a candidate. So 5 times the number of voters in that state voted uncommitted against Joe Biden than voted against Barack Obama as uncommitted back in 2012. That's a big number. To register discontent, and that's really the only thing we can measure right now with an uncommitted vote, that is large. And that's why Joe Biden has been such a wimp when it comes to Israel and Hamas. He's kind of trying to ride this fence, which is completely impossible to ride, where he tries to say, yeah, no, we're back in Israel, but ceasefire, as he's slurping on ice cream 2 days ago at the ice cream shop. Yeah, as he's gumming away at the ice cream a couple of days ago. I mean, did you see the video? Did he have his aviators on in that video as he's gumming away at his ice cream, talking about ceasefires?
No, he was squinty.
He was squinty.
I think he was about to fall asleep.
That's right. Yeah, there's going to be a cease. Sorry. Got a quick nap in there. Yeah, cease. What do we call it? Cease what? Cease and desist? No, it's a ceasefire. Yeah, ceasefire. That's what we want. Want a ceasefire there on the Gaza Strip. Okay, thanks, Joe. So he's kind of riding this fence of trying to be pro-Israel, but then also not offending a Muslim base in America that is very much sympathetic to what Hamas is doing. Now, it seems awfully disturbing that you would try to sympathize with a group that wants to see the destruction of the West. And that's really what we're talking about here. I mean, heck, there are members of Congress that feel that way. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, they can't stand this country. They hate everything about America. And they have millions of supporters around the country that Joe Biden desperately needs to win re-election. Think about that. Joe Biden needs people who hate America to win re-election. Put that into perspective. And that's why he's trying to ride the fence on this thing and get both sides to basically help him out as best as he can. And now it could impact him come November as well if some of these people stay home. They're not going to vote for Trump, but they'll stay home. Where are we at on reparations in this town? I got thinking about that last night as I was reading this story out of San Francisco. That supervisors in San Francisco formally apologized yesterday to African Americans and their descendants for the city's role in perpetuating racism and discrimination, with several stating that this was just the start of reparations for black residents in San Francisco and not the end. So they formally apologized. Wow. Gosh, that make you feel warm and fuzzy inside? The vote was unanimous. All 11 board members signed on as sponsors of the resolution. So San Francisco joins another major U.S. city, Boston, in issuing an apology. 9 states have formally apologized. You know, don't get me wrong. If someone wants to apologize for something, that's great. But why are any of us alive today apologizing for slavery? Why are we, like, when you apologize for something you did, right? Like you did. Not something that your great-great-great-grandparents may have done. I mean, for many of us, we weren't even our families were not in the country when slavery was happening in this country. And then, by the way, I mean, what about the courageous men who fought to end slavery on behalf of the Union in this country? Is anyone going to issue a formal thank you to them? Because don't forget, America did lead the way in ending the heinous act of slavery. We led it around the world with the Civil War. So does that get brought up, or is it just about the apology side? And I'll tell you right now, as someone whose family was not here then, why am I going to, as a citizen, apologize for something I had no involvement with, my family had no involvement with? Why am I going to do that? To make somebody else feel good who also may not have even necessarily been here or had their family here when slavery was going on in this country? Right? Why? So anyway, this is, though, just the first step of recommendations of more than 100 proposals made by a city committee in San Francisco. The African American Reparations Advisory Committee is also proposing that every eligible black adult receive a $5 million lump sum cash payment and a guaranteed income of nearly $100,000 a year to remedy San Francisco's deep racial wealth gap. So you get the $5 million lump sum, and then you get the $100,000 on top every year, John. I'm gonna be identifying as, I'm moving to San Francisco. I'm identifying as black, so I'll see you guys later.
So much of the Civil War was fought there.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
I mean, more of it here in Missouri.
Way more. Yeah, that's a
great. From what I understand about the building of the railroads, etc., if I'm a member of the Asian community, I'm like, hello.
Yeah. Anything for us? Yeah. Chinese community in California. Hello.
Say, there might have been a greater instance of that in that state at that time than anywhere else in the nation.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. I don't see them, going around looking for their $5 million checks.
But the people who issued that apology, boy, do they feel good.
Oh, boy, they're patting themselves on the back.
That's what this is about, right?
Oh, you're right. Absolutely.
We'll be the ones to forgive.
Yes.
We'll issue the apology.
And then they'll go to their cocktail parties, right? They'll eat their shrimp.
Well, they do it here in town, right? Didn't we do it with Rock Hill at the Star? William Rockhill.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, of course, we've renamed J.C. Nichols Parkway. We'll be the ones.
We'll be the ones.
Mm-hmm.
So,
aren't we swell?
So that's what's going on in San Francisco. So that not triggered me literally, but just made me think about where we're at here in Kansas City. Because we do have a mayor's commission on reparations. And we haven't heard a lot about it since it was formed officially middle of last year. You may recall that the Kansas City Reparations Commission was sworn in May of 2023. So it's almost been, about a year. And they were tasked to produce an initial report within their first year and a final report within 18 months. So we're approaching the 1-year mark of this Reparations Commission being in place here in Kansas City. And I was trying to find some information on kind of where this thing is at. And the most recent article I could find comes from KC Flatland. And what they write here, this is from late January, so about a month ago. Mayor Quentin Lucas has committed to proposing that the city of Kansas City approve $210,000 of the $510,000 requested by the Reparations Commission within the next 30 days. Approval of the city funds would need council approval. The plan is to ask the civic and the business community for the remaining funds. What's going to happen with $510,000 for the Reparations Commission? What have they done the last 6 months? What will they do the next 6 to 12 months to justify $200,000 in your taxpayer monies and then $300,000 from the business community and the civic community? What's the money for? What are we studying? What is the commission doing with that said money? And you might say, well, it's just $200,000 out of a city budget. That's chump change. That's $200,000 that could be used for who knows what other quality programs and for quality employees and raises and new hires and whatever else they might need. What is possibly going to be used by the Reparations Commission in this town for $200,000? Someone help me here. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO. And as I was thinking back to the Reparations Commission, I thought back to last summer when I was on a reparations panel here in town. And I was on the stage with mostly folks who were pro-reparations. I walked right into the lion's den. But the panel was being hosted by Nick Haynes. So I trusted him to treat me fairly, which he did. But some of the TV reports coming out of that event, I mean, they were just totally wild.
Reparations is the start of closing that gap.
Living right now is kind of like being in the Hunger Games. I feel like I'm not exactly in Section 12, but I'm in at least Section 8. And I'm halfway there, but I'm not all the way there because I feel like I would never be seen equal.
Who should be on the receiving end? Any black person?
At this point, I feel like any black person, because once we start segregating it, then what was the whole point?
Once we start segregating, I mean, gosh, there's just so much there to unravel. So much. And I probably don't have enough time for it, so I'm going to let you go at 913-408-7957. But all right, everyone and anyone, doesn't really matter what your background is, if you actually should qualify. It's just come on in. The more the merrier. The money's green. Sign up. Section 8, Section 12. I mean, everyone's struggling right now. Bidenomics, baby. Mike's on KCMO. Go ahead, Mike. Good morning.
Yeah, you've got the wrong word for that. It's not reparations. Reparations are getting something from someone directly who caused the problem, like the rail company that did all the damage in East Palestine. That would be a reparation because they're going to repair the damage that they did. What we're talking about now are reprisals. These are where you go after innocent people because something's happened. You go after innocent people and you punish and persecute innocent people. Just like when the general got killed in World War II, they went into the village of Lidice and killed 5,000 people because it made the Nazis feel better. What you got right now, you're trying to make people feel better by punishing innocent people. Mm-hmm. These are reprisals. They're not reparations. And every time that they use the word reparation, it should be corrected as reprisals because there's not a single person alive right now that ever owned a slave in the antebellum United States. They're all dead. And there's not a single slave that's alive that's a victim of it because they're all dead.
Mike, I might just steal that away from you here and start saying, it's not the reparations panel, it's the reprisals panel. I like that. Because you're right. It really is more of an act of retaliation than it is anything else. It's not reparations by the definition. So good job there, Mike. Early frontrunner for the caller of the day, which we announced at 9:30 here on KCMO towards the end of the show. Andy Reid speaking for the first time on the Super Bowl parade shooting. We'll hear from him next. I get what Andy Reid was going for. I really do. His heart's in the right place. But he was wrong yesterday when he stood at the podium at the NFL Combine and made his first public comments since the Super Bowl parade shooting, now 2 weeks ago tomorrow, and said this. Take a listen to Andy Reid and his full minute-long statement from yesterday at the NFL Combine.
Right. Before we get started, I just want to put a shout-out to the Gavin and Lopez family for their loss with Lisa, and for the people of Kansas City. She was a personality there and a very good human being, first of all, and we'll all miss her, as I know her family will. And then just a positive word on Kansas City. That's not what Kansas City is all about. And then for our youth of America, that we gather together and make this is great. You're our future, and as great as we can make this place, we want to do that. And so we can turn this, which was a negative, into a real positive with just a little togetherness and love. I think we can fix a lot of problems here.
Coach Speak 101 from Andy Reid. That's what that was. Now, it was nice of him to say those words. And I say this as someone who likes Andy Reid. I'm a fan of Andy Reid. But none of that's going to solve anything. Nothing that he just laid out there is going to fix anything in this town. First off, when he says that's not what Kansas City is all about, I get what he's going for, right? He's like, Kansas City is not about that tragedy. That's true. But as we've said for 2 weeks now, that is a large part of what Kansas City is. Thugs on streets shooting each other, resulting in record levels of homicide because people with criminal backgrounds oftentimes are not getting prosecuted like they should be in this town. That's a big part of Kansas City's story, and the whole world got to see it on display 2 weeks ago. It's a fact. It's not my opinion. That's a fact. And that's why this morning at 7:35, we have one of our most important conversations of the year with John Gromowski, who is running to be Jackson County prosecutor to replace Gene Peters Baker. He is running as a Democrat, and he's going to be on the show at 7:35 on KCMO. Can't wait for it. But, this is the underbelly of Kansas City that honest local news people talk about. It's not just all rah-rah Chiefs. This is happening, and it's happening on our streets, and the whole world got to see it on display at the Super Bowl parade. And, at the end, I get when Andy Reid goes on to say, hey, we can turn this negative into a positive with a little togetherness and love, and we can fix a lot of problems. No, this ain't hippie hour. All right? The only way to fix these problems is to make sure that you take the worst of the worst criminals and you get them off the streets. And you get prosecutors who criminals fear, which they do not in this town. And you get a prosecutor who the cops trust and the cops want to work with. and they want to work alongside, and they view as a teammate instead of this office right now, which is viewed as the enemy. Whether that's an exaggeration or not doesn't really matter. That's how this office is viewed by the people and the men and women of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department by and large. So I'm glad Andy didn't get overly political, right? He's not going up there saying, yeah, if only we fixed the gun laws. Like, I appreciate him not doing that.
Like a couple of NBA guys,
yeah,
Popovich and Kerr.
Oh, my goodness.
Right.
Oh.
So I will say, give him that much.
I exactly agree. I totally agree there, John. I will give him that much.
I kind of feel like, though, it's not his normal speaking avenue, and so some of the verbiage could have been brought more up to date.
Yeah,
could have been a little more succinct, a little quicker.
It was just out of touch. You know, it was the wrong words.
It speaks to the need that somehow he felt the need or was told to say that, you know, in this situation too, right?
Yeah. And that's fine.
I mean, been fine without hearing from Andy Reid at this point, right?
Well, I get it. Someone was probably going to ask him about it. So he's like, let me just get ahead of this and say something. Hey,
there you go. I guess so, right?
Thoughts and prayers for the family.
That's what Mark and I were talking about. This is the first time he's maybe been in front of the media since the parade, right?
He hasn't done anything since then.
Yeah, rather than getting asked about it left and right, they just make a statement.
Let me just say something, and then we'll all move on. So it makes sense for him to do that. And it's not like he had any pre-prepared remarks or anything of that nature. He just started talking. And there can be good with that. There can be not so good with that. It's not a bad statement. I'm not like, oh, my goodness, what an embarrassment. It's just not telling the full story, right? But it is better, to John's point, than Greg Popovich or Steve Kerr or some of those NBA coaches where every time some tragedy happens, they're up there on their high horse yelling about politics.
Enough is enough.
Yeah, who was that? Was that Popovich?
Yeah, I think so. He slams the table.
Yeah, that's right. He slams the table. Hey, buddy, you haven't won a damn thing since Tim Duncan was around. All right? Can you learn how to win basketball? I mean, Greg Popovich is like the Bill Belichick of the NBA. He couldn't win a damn thing without a superstar, but he's a egomaniac as far as I can tell.
As if the people in front of him were the perps.
Yeah, that's true, too.
Like, okay.
Well, they have a very willing sports media that will push whatever these goobers have to say.
Well, there's that.
So Andy Reid, who, remember, now I don't know where Andy's at on, gun laws or anything like that. But don't forget, back in 2018, he did do fundraisers with Jeff Collier, who was then the incumbent Republican governor in Kansas, who eventually lost his primary to Chris Kobach, and then Kobach, of course, lost to Governor Kelly that year. But we do have an inkling of Andy Reid's political leanings. And I don't need Andy to get up there and say, yeah, fire, get a good prosecutor in town. I'd love that, but I don't expect that. And, nor should he really go into that. But it also is not telling the full story to say, a little togetherness and love is going to fix a lot of problems. Togetherness and love are not going to fix the problems. There's already a lot of togetherness and love in Kansas City. Kansas Cityans love each other in every corner of this city, every corner of this town. Unfortunately, part of the poorer parts of Kansas City can't do anything about it. They are stuck in these neighborhoods that are just absolutely going to hell in a handbasket because of criminals. That's what's going on. That's what's happening here. And that has to be addressed before anything else gets addressed. 913-408-7957. That's our studio line. That's our text line here on KCMO Talk Radio as we roll through a Wednesday morning, bottom of the hour. Don't miss it at 7:35. John Gromowski. He is running for Jackson County prosecutor. He announced it yesterday. He had a press conference here in town. And this is one of those things that we have got to address and has got to be brought up. Victor in Parkville, go ahead. You're next up.
Good morning, Pete. I've met Coach Reid. He's a man of faith, and he was speaking from the heart, and I really get that. But maybe what he needed was a teleprompter.
Might not have been the worst thing. Hey, Andy Reid is paid, and apparently he's going to get a big old fat extension of like $15+ million a year. Andy Reid's paid a lot of money because he's an offensive genius. But, off the cuff speaking can be hit or miss. 913-408-7957 as we roll through the morning. Kevin, Overland Park, next up. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hey, Pete. I appreciate what Andy said. I mean, I'm sure he did try to get ahead of that story so he wouldn't have to field a bunch of questions, which is fine. But until the criminals have a genuine fear of the consequences, which is the penalties as well as the prosecutors, these crimes will continue like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Kevin. And I'm not asking Andy Reid to say that, but you are absolutely spot on. You nailed it, man.
Yeah. That's what they need.
They need it desperately. And we'll see if this guy, John Gromowski, wants to do that, Kevin. Don't miss that conversation. It is 20 minutes away on KCMO. Meantime, did you see who got cheated on? I don't know if there's hope for us as guys if this person got cheated on. I don't like our odds. I'll tell you who next on KCMO 95.7 FM. 2 hours and change until the Chiefs roll out their big renderings for an upgraded Arrowhead Stadium. Reimagined. I don't think the word they're using. That's the word they use in politics, though. We're going to reimagine policing. Remember that stupidity from 4 years ago? You're going to have a bunch of, soy boys walking around with, pocket knives trying to talk people off the ledge. So that was reimagining policing 4 years ago. Anyway, the Chiefs are going to have their plans here at about 10 o'clock. Ray Stevens will cover it on KCMO when that press conference takes place. But last night, if you were watching local news, you may have seen this ad, this commercial that got dropped by the two teams, the yes side, the folks that want you to vote yes on extending the 3/8 cent sales tax coming up on April 2nd. Let's roll it.
This community rises together no matter what comes our way. We've worked, battled, and overcome together. Vote yes on question 1 that keeps the Chiefs and Royals in Jackson County with a better deal. New private investment, growing small businesses, creating good-paying jobs with no new taxes. Vote yes on question 1 to keep the Chiefs and Royals here in Jackson County. Let's keep it going.
Okay. All right. I'd give the ad a solid B if I was grading it. But I'm sitting here and I'm listening to some of what was in that ad, and I'm saying to myself, okay, no new taxes. Technically true. Now, if you want to look at it and say, well, they're repealing this tax and adding a new tax, you can make that case.
Technically true and technically not true, right?
That's
kind of a weird thing.
That's the best way to put it.
It's no more money out of your pocket if you vote yes.
Correct. The jobs, I don't buy the jobs. I've never bought the jobs thing. And the reason I don't buy the jobs thing is because they're temporary jobs, right? If you're building something, those are temporary jobs. Now, if you're saying there's going to be new private business investment all over the region of where the stadium's going to be, maybe. Maybe. Possible. But you're also losing businesses that are currently there. Once again, I'm not saying this as someone who's against the stadium. I think there's a lot of positives to moving the stadium downtown. In fact, of the options that were available at the very end, the East Village or this Crossroads, I thought the Crossroads made a heck of a lot more sense than that East Village location. But the ad, it's good. But I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, man, if you were on the fence, you're totally sold. I think it's kind of a rah-rah thing, and it's a good first pitch.
To your point, the visual on the creating new jobs seemed to be construction-oriented.
Yes, okay.
That particular visual for people who haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, it's up on the KCMO Talk Radio Twitter page. You can see it there right now. And then at the end, of course, they show the Mahomes pass to McCole Hardman to win the Super Bowl, followed by Mahomes holding up the Super Bowl trophy. Who's going to say no to that?
That made it an A for me. Keep them.
You're such a damn sucker, Mark. How about you go move to Jackson County then, okay?
Or they could bring it to Kansas if they want. I'm fine with that.
No. Yeah, keep Arrowhead. All right, one thing I appreciate Clark Hunt doing in all this, he's not trying to build a new stadium. He's just trying to upgrade what he's got out there. And that's what he should be doing. You've got one of the crown jewels of stadiums in the entire country. Don't ruin a good thing. The Chiefs have handled this thus far to perfection. The Royals, not as much. The Royals have stepped in it time and time again, and they've done it to themselves. Like, they've literally stepped on the rake, and it's hit them right in the face. They've blown through their own timelines. They've preached transparency when anyone who's paying an ounce of attention knows they really haven't had any. And now here we are 5 weeks out, literally 5 weeks from yesterday, and, we're still kind of trying to figure out what's going to happen to parts of the Crossroads. What's the entertainment district look like? What are we getting for our monies? I mean, it looks pretty, but we still kind of don't know where we're going to park. A lot of things, John.
Well, and the Royals don't get any favors because they're dealing with the county and Mr. Congeniality, Frank White.
Well,
right. So
fair
talk
enough.
about a black hole in the vacuum for information just getting sucked out the room.
Well, that is a very fair point.
They're not getting any help there.
No,
I'll say
they don't.
They're going to have to help themselves, but they're not getting any additional.
They do not have any allies at the county level, to your point. And whether that's petty politics from Frank White, whether it's personal for Frank White, I don't know. I'm not here to defend Frank White either. But I saw this article from Fox 4 last night, and Jonathan Ketz has done a great job reporting on this. I wish I could get him on the show, but for some reason he's banned. Not his fault, the boss is there or something, I guess. But anyway, I might have to switch around the names, by the way. I mean, we've been calling 41 Action News Woke 41 for years. But suddenly, they've got reporters who are some of the first to put out mugshots and all the information on these shooters from the parade 2 weeks ago. Meantime, I can't get anyone from Fox 4 on anymore. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, good reporting from Ketz here. And he reports that this week, the committee to keep the Chiefs and Royals in Jackson County posted on X saying that a proposed lease was submitted to the county and that CBA efforts are continuing. But the county leaders say they haven't seen it. Manny Hack-Abarca told Fox 4 on Monday that he was unaware that a lease agreement was sent over. So I think, again, that this goes back to transparency from the executive's office. Now, Abarca went on to say, as the chief executive of the entire county, talking about Frank White, if he doesn't know about it, that's a him problem. However, Frank White confirmed that he has not seen any proposed lease from the Royals and the Chiefs as they both hope to advance their respective stadium projects. He told Fox 4 yesterday, I have not, nor has anyone in my office received any proposed lease agreements for the Royals and the Chiefs. So everyone's pointing the finger at each other right now. Who's on first? And that's where, if you're the county taxpayer, and you've watched the incompetency of this county over the last 6 to 12 months, and damn, it's been incompetent. A part of you probably just wants to vote no to stick it to these goobers. Not because you don't want the stadium, not because you don't think the Chiefs should upgrade Arrowhead, but just because you're sick of the elites and you're sick of the political class and your taxes are going up, and you just want to send a message. And while I wouldn't favor that side coming out on top, I still think it's 80-20 this thing passes. I'm not going to overlook it either. That would be wrong. Got to get a backbone. Got to do it. These municipalities and these counties, and this is true in Kansas City, and frankly, I think it should be true around the entire country. And you're starting to see some news and some movement on this in just the last few days. So yesterday we told you about how in Shawnee, their city council, which has been dealing with and trying to address the concerns of short-term rentals like Airbnbs and VRBOs in the city, they did ultimately pass something a couple of nights ago to try to crack down on this. City council passed an ordinance outlining new rules for short-term rentals in the city, requiring licenses, prohibiting the property from being used as a reception or party space, and requiring an agent or person managing the property to be within a 40-mile radius. Good steps, not nearly enough, but steps in the right direction. And now, this from the Lawrence Journal World yesterday. Local owners of Airbnb and VRBO may see their property tax bill double, as the county, Douglas County in that case, would tax such homes like hotels. And I'm like, okay, now we're talking. I still don't think that's enough, by the way. If I was the great dictator, I would ban them in residential neighborhoods. You're basically electing to rezone your own property as commercial property, as a hotel. That's wrong. You don't get to rezone land. Why should you get to rezone your home and turn it into a hotel and impact and devalue the homes right around you? That's ridiculous. All for you to make a buck? And I know, I know there's a lot of people that probably see the world the way I do that will disagree with me on this. And that's fine. The phones are open at 913-408-7957. But here's the thing. You know, for most people, their homes are their largest asset, their largest investment. And let's say you live in a neighborhood and you've got 4 to 5 Airbnbs like directly surrounding you. What do you think that does to the value of your property, your home? You think your home would go up if you put it on the market in value, or do you think you would take a bit of a hit? If you're selling your home and you've got to, you know, if people are asking, you've got to tell them that they are surrounded by Airbnb rentals. Whether it's people renting out the entire property for weekends, whether it's people renting out rooms, what do you think that does to the value of your home? It decreases it. It makes the value of your home less. So we've got to stop this in residential neighborhoods. And it's up to cities to do it. It's up to counties to do it. And, you know, what Douglas County is doing, I know some are going to scream about it being government overreach and the government's, you know, taking money from people. And I said, the government can't take more money from me. This is my property. If you want to run a hotel, go run a hotel. You can have your people pay hotel taxes. You know, you can do your whole thing. But you do not get to denigrate a residential neighborhood so you can start having people who no one knows, by the way, partying and doing God knows what on your property. That is not fair to those residents around you. And, you know, I'll tell a personal story I've never told on the air. I'm telling you for the first time here on KCMO Talk Radio. We had this very issue in my neighborhood. And it's too bad that it came to this, but it did happen in my neighborhood where we had people who were trying to do that. And there were dozens of people, myself included, who were complaining about it. Now, thankfully, we have an HOA, and the HOA rules did not allow and do not allow people to basically rent out their homes with Airbnbs. Just not allowed. You can't have basically multifamily homes in residential properties that are meant for single families. You can't do that. So thankfully, we were protected by our own HOA. And it's too bad because it, you know, cost relationships. But heck, you know, people want to do what they want to do. And as far as I'm concerned, just like someone will say, well, I'm just doing what's in my best interest. Well, guess what? So is the rest of the neighborhood. So take a hike. But if you're not in an HOA, then you're reliant on city ordinances and city and county governments. And that's where cities need to start stepping up because already the residential neighborhood's under attack. Builders don't want to build homes anymore. They want to put up these dopey apartments, and every one of these moronic city council members in counties all over the metro, they go along with it. They jam these things through, and you've got 4 to 5 story apartments getting put up all over Kansas City. And they're eyesores, and they're hideous, and they're doing the bidding of the developers, and what they're getting under the table is not my business, but it's completely out of control. So the single-family neighborhood is under attack. And this is just making it worse. It's making it worse because now you've got, you know, people turning their homes into hotels. So there should be repercussions for that. I don't think it should be allowed, but if you're going to allow it, at least start hammering people on some of this stuff. And at least make it about, hey, fine, you want to run a hotel, you're going to be treated like a hotel. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's how it's going to go. Because if not, you're not going to recognize residential neighborhoods in 20 years. Everything is going to be transient. You're not going to know your neighbors. You're not going to know who's next to you, who's behind you. I mean, the whole thing is going to become a joke. Strong neighborhoods that actually, help us as a culture promote family values and all these different things. That's what we should want. Not people who are out there just, trying to turn homes into turnstile doors of hotels for the weekend. It's just comical. 913-408-7957. Let's go to Tom in Lee Summit. What's up, Tom? Good morning.
Yeah, Pete, I'm kind of disagreeing with you on this one, which is kind of irregular, but I'll take this one.
Go ahead. Disagree.
Okay, so, where do you stop? It is government overreach. You yourself provided the answer to the solution, which is homeowners, HOA situations taking care of that, and people choosing to whether they want to live in a HOA and follow their rules. For those residences that don't have that, they could establish an HOA that could be done post.
Well, that's kind of like saying we have school choice if you can pay to send your kid to private school.
Okay, and then what you're saying is kind of like saying that you can't even rent a house out because now you should be charged more money for a house. Like I got a little rental house that I rent out, and I pay the same property taxes that I would if I was living there.
You're bringing up a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I want to add that caveat. I'm not applying this to long-term rentals. You renting out a home to someone, for 6, 9, 12, 24 months, that is completely different from the Airbnb model. Would you agree?
Not really. Just a different person. We're all the same.
No. Because you're doing background checks on people. You're making sure that someone who's going to be there for a year is someone invested in your property. If you're renting out your home for 2 nights and you don't even know who it is or what they're going to be doing, that's way different from what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, but the point we're not allowed to do. It's going to come rapidly where we're not going to allow to do background checks.
What?
You follow that? You follow that in the news? In the news lately?
Yeah. In Kansas City, yeah. I see what you're talking about. Yeah. You're still allowed to do background checks, but no, I get your broader point. I'm just sitting here and I'm saying I'm not against long-term rentals. If you want to own rental homes, I know people are in that business all the time. But long-term rentals are way different from just turning over a home every single weekend and not knowing who's coming in, who's leaving. I
know. I got your point there.
Yeah.
And on the HOA price point, HOA could be established for administrative. It doesn't mean you got to have a swimming pool there and start paying $1,000 a year. Mm-hmm. You could have it administratively, and it would be very nominal, if anything, and worth everybody. If that was such an impediment to the neighborhood, then everybody would be willing to do that. Now, let me ask you this: where do you stop? Because maybe I'm an Uber driver or a DoorDash driver, or maybe do I need a chauffeur license if I'm an Uber driver?
Do I need to what?
Do I need to get a chauffeur license now because I'm an Uber driver and I'm commercial and I'm putting a bunch of short-term people in my car?
Well, no, because here's the thing. Someone can choose to get in your vehicle. If I live in my home, I can't choose if the Airbnb decides to open up next door.
Yes, conceptually, you understand my point, but I agree with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Tom, good stuff. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I wanted to have that back and forth. I'm glad Tom was willing to do it. 913-408-7957. And I don't think it's realistic to say, hey, just go build an HOA or establish an HOA. That's tough. I don't even know where you would start. It just would be nice if the city councils in and around Johnson County and around the region, for that matter, actually, for once in the last bunch of years, looked out for the interests of residential homeowners and not developers and every Tom, Dick, and Harry who now thinks that he wants to open up a hotel in his basement. Because I'll tell you right now, someone's opening up an Airbnb, near me, which happened. I got 2 little girls playing in my backyard. And I got creepers that I don't know, that nobody really knows, because you can make up fake Airbnb accounts. No one really knows who you are. Walking within, 25, 50 feet of my little kids. No.